Hello and welcome to another episode of David's Divergent Discussions. My name is David Gray Hammond and I will be your host for this evening. Excuse me. With me also, as always, is my co-host Katie Monday.
Hey.
And we're joined today by Bird Sellergren and Jacek Wade. It's going to be a really good one. As always, they're always really good. I always say that every time. It's going to be a really good one. Of course, it's going to be good. It's David's Divergent Discussions.
Exactly.
In a second, we'll do some brief audio descriptions, which we forgot to do last week.
We did. I think that.
But before we start,
right
I
on in.
wanted people to know, if you're on Android, I've just released a new app with all the neurodiversity stuff on my website in Android app form, and it will soon come to iOS. But if you're looking for it, it's called Neurodiversity 101. So, go download it because I don't know, it's cool. I made an app. I did a thing. I mean, there was definitely other stuff I should have been doing. But I made an app, so anyway, brief audio description. So my name is David Gray Hammond. I'm a male presenting person with a beard, sunglasses, a shaved head, like ear stretcher thing. I never really know what to call it. Is it like a tunnel or I don't know. Yeah, and I've got a lip piercing, and I'm in a navy blue t-shirt, sat in my very blue room, and still the bookcase is standing and not threatening to fall on me. So I think I made the right choice by getting a new bookcase. It's taken a little of the jeopardy out of things, so I don't have that adrenaline keeping me running.
It's true.
But Bird won't understand this because they haven't been on here before, but I used to have this bookcase that was definitely going to fall on me at one point, and it became a feature of every single episode. Anyway, Katie, would you like to do a brief audio description?
Yeah, sure. So I am a large white person. You can see from the shoulders up. I'm wearing my PJs. It's past 5 o'clock, so I have like navy kind of PJs on. They went on at 1 o'clock today, but shh. And I'm sat in my favourite chair in the front room, got my glasses on, hair's a bit messy, definitely needs a trim, in front of usual kind of green curtains. And I'm fiddling with this very lovely thing today. It's called a Hexy something. It's from Chewy Gem, but it's a very lovely snowflake type, very hard wearing, chewy loveliness. So I'll probably be using that quite a lot.
Okay. Bird, I'm going to ask you to do an audio description just to let you know your video is flickering. Not entirely sure why.
I'm not sure why either. I'm hoping it's not the background. And I was wondering if you all were seeing that too. Yeah. So I am a white person with short, dark blonde hair, black, large rim glasses, a button-up rainbow striped shirt, and I'm in front of a photograph of a pond at sunrise in Golden Gate Park. And on that, while Jacek's introducing themselves, I'm going to try to fix my background.
And okay, Jacek.
Hi everybody, I'm Jacek. I use it and they pronouns. I am a white, non-binary human with bleach blonde hair on top, shaved sides. You can't really see it in the frame, but I have a shirt that says pizza rolls, not gender roles on it. And I'm in front of some art on my back wall. Oh, and I have a red flannel on as well.
Fantastic. Well, I feel like I'd be remiss if I didn't point this out because I don't think this happens all that often. But I, as the cisgender male, am outnumbered today, which I think is pretty cool. We're obviously doing Pride Month, right? So I find that pretty cool. We're going to talk about queer and neuro-affirming spaces and practice and safer spaces and things like that. So I guess a good starting point would be, what do queer and neuro-affirming spaces mean to us? Who wants to jump in first?
I mean, I can go. I got plenty to say. Hopefully Bird will be on their way back. But I find queer and neuro-affirming spaces to be vital, whether I create them myself around me in my own environment with my friends or whomever else, or if they're provided out in the wild, that I find. I notice an immediate shift from being in like a survival state to being in a thriving state because of these spaces. I feel like there's a lot of room for creativity and connection in ways that are authentic and genuine, rather than, having to mask or lose spoons for the sake of participating. And yeah, they can just truly be life-changing. So I'm very grateful to have those when they're around.
Fantastic. Katie, would you like to weigh in here?
Yeah, I think I feel like they're the same thing.
Oh, yeah.
If that doesn't sound strange. And I know I'm saying that as a queer neurodivergent person, and there'll be so many neurodivergent people are not happy about the fact that I've said that. So I'm not saying that all neurodivergent people are inherently sexually, relationally, whatever, queer, but we are a relatively queer bunch. And if you're going to be inclusive on one strand of inclusivity, you might as well be on all the strands of inclusivity. So yeah, I very much mirror what Jacek was saying about turning up somewhere as your full self, as opposed to compartmentalizing myself into, well, I can definitely be, I'm openly autistic anyway, like it just it's just the way it is. But there are areas that I can be more openly autistic, if that makes any sense. And there are areas that I just cannot be trans in, or cannot be bisexual in, or just don't talk about that topic in any way, shape, or form. From not just a safety point of view, but also from I just don't want to be educating everyone. I just don't want to be educating everyone. There's going to be questions, like you were saying last week, David, when you were talking about being pan or bi or asexual and kind of working yourself out. People got a lot of questions about it, and you don't always have the answers, and the answers aren't for everybody else anyways. So people just, if someone said, "Oh, I was heterosexual," people don't go, "Oh, well, when was this, and when did that happen, and blah blah blah, and how did you know?" And no one talks about it. But when you're queer, people talk about it all the time.
I think I mentioned last week that every time I say I'm pansexual, people make the joke about being sexually attracted to cooking implements, and it's kind of like, okay, that was mildly amusing from certain people, but this is like the 100,000th time I've heard that now. But Bird, are you with us?
Yes, I am. Is my video in motion for you, or is it still?
It's not, but we can hear you, and that's what matters. So
I don't know why I'm having so much difficulty. It's sad because this computer is actually new. So anyway, I'm glad that I'm somewhat up on the screen. Yeah, can you, I kind of checked out while we were introducing the question. Could you?
Yeah, so we're talking about what queer and neuro-affirming spaces and practice means to us.
Yeah. So queer neuro-affirming spaces for me really is just any space where I can unmask. Though as time goes on, it seems like neuro-affirming spaces are less and less spaces that include allistic people and straight people and cis people, and are affirming because they are made up of people who I have shared lived experiences with.
Yeah. and I think we've come back to this a few times. And actually, before I carry on, remember, if you're watching live, you can join in the comments. So feel free to add your comments here. But I was talking about this at work today. You know, the LGBTQIA2S plus community is really, I don't want to say overrepresented because it makes it sound like we shouldn't be there, but do you know what I mean? Like, we are very well represented in neurodivergent spaces. There's a lot of us, and I know for me, you know, I think being in neurodivergent spaces has actually made it feel a bit easier to be queer, because there are just a lot more people that get it. And for me, this is what a queer and neuro-affirming space is because by virtue of both of those identities, I feel welcome to an extent in those places. But then sometimes I spend so much time in those places that I forget there are a lot of parts of the world where those things are not well received.
Mm-hmm.
It's a trip, isn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah. I kind of forget that cisgender heterosexual people exist.
Me too. Me too.
Tanya Adkin and I have joked repeatedly that finding a cisgender heterosexual person in the autistic community is like spotting a unicorn out in the wild. And that's not me saying that everyone is queer, although I'm starting to think they might be. But you know, there's a lot of us, and so I liked what you were saying, Katie. You know, you can't be supportive of one without being supportive of the other, really, because if you deny either one group, you are cutting out a massive chunk of the other group.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, 100%. Yeah.
But Moats Place the Page says, it is unfortunate that we continue to feel less safe in atypical non-LGBTQ plus spaces. Has anyone got any thoughts on that?
I would like to weigh in on this. As you were saying, you are the only cisgender man in this Zoom room. So I have a feeling that a lot of us have experienced misogyny, and that's within disabled spaces too. That's you know, like you've written about before, David, about, you know, not all autistic people are actually nice. Like, you know, we don't all get on with each other. We call it a community, but we don't all know each other, let alone get on with each other and have the same kind of goals and stuff. So for me, there's a queer phobia and ableism is very much wrapped up in misogyny as well, like 100%. And I feel like that people get responded to differently and have different expectations placed upon them for their sex, gender, or how their sex and gender are perceived to be. So I definitely 100% feel that, especially in regards to safety as well.
Yeah, and like I think that makes me think of the fact that one of the things people really struggle with, and they do struggle with it in the autistic community, neurodivergent spaces, is having that awareness of privilege. I have not always been aware of my privilege. I think I'm a pretty alright guy these days, but there were times when I had bigoted opinions and benefited from other people's bigoted opinions. I probably still, I do benefit from, for example, misogyny because it places me as a cisgender male at the top of some weird hierarchy that someone invented. But I think when you're creating these affirmative spaces for queer and neurodivergent people, particularly when, you know, for both groups, you need to have an awareness of your privilege. Because I think a lot of people start with good intentions and end up not hitting the mark.
Yeah, that's interesting that
Yeah.
you say that, because one thing I've been thinking a lot about lately, just because I observed a situation in a group that I was in that was a fully autistic space, was that there was some conflict around language, and the language on one side was very trans affirming, and a cis man didn't understand the need to use that language, and there was a complaint that came out of that, and feedback was not taken well, specifically because I think of rejection sensitivity dysphoria, which is very common among autistic people. And there, within that, there was a barrier to recognizing privilege as a white cis male compared to the trans woman that was trying to educate him on the proper use of language. And so even though it was a fully autistic space, it did become hostile in some ways, you know, and the cis man ended up just leaving and not returning. And it just made me think a lot about how to create safe spaces for autistic people when there are these differences in awareness about privilege and willingness to compromise, and how to overcome personal emotionality, like around rejection sensitivity dysphoria or PDA or something like that.
I think rejection sensitive dysphoria is a good thing to have an awareness of as well, because it can lead to a lot of hostility, and it can really harm that attempt to create affirming spaces. I don't know if anyone wants to weigh in here. Or...
I think it's.
I had something to say and I've completely lost it.
I think it's interesting. I mean, okay, so humans in general are just meaning-making machines. You know, we like to have order amongst the chaos, and a lot of that depends on assumptions, right? And then acting on those assumptions. And I think with RSD, it's interesting that a lot of our brains are like preconditioned and wired to have this like innate drive to have assumptions, and it's not just like consciously done, but like viscerally, like in our nervous system done. So it's like it's a whole new way of experiencing assumptions and acting on assumptions. And I know for myself, dealing with RSD and coping with it better and managing it better, has come down to embracing mindfulness as a skill to practice with.
Yes.
Yeah. And I think a lot of our autistic and queer community, while we are very aware, a lot of us are, and a lot of us are committed to that kind of growth and helping ourselves, I think there are opportunities that get missed because people are so stuck in, well, I'm autistic, well, I'm queer, and not getting out of that like almost victim mentality of like, but we have agency over our systems, not in everything, not all the time, but there are things we can do to help ourselves and curate safer, more inclusive spaces for everybody. Like helping ourselves help other people and helping other people to help ourselves kind of deal. So yeah, I think that's just an idea that strikes me with RSD. Like, yeah, we can't exactly help our wiring, but maybe we can work towards skill and dealing with that wiring, and help each other, you know, have better awareness and practice and that kind of stuff.
Jasek, I really love that you brought this up. This is Bird. Because this has been something that's on my mind a lot lately, and it's an area of research, just mindfulness and autism as a combined situation. I'm actually currently working on my mindfulness meditation teacher certification. I have an extensive link, like across several years meditation practice that's been absolutely transformative for me as an autistic person in the sense of like desensitizing me from strong reactions to things based in rejection sensitivity dysphoria, or anger, or it just tempers my reactions because things roll off my back so much easier. And research shows that autistic people have such intense transformations around mindfulness. And interestingly, there's even research that shows that caretakers who have engaged in mindfulness practices, who are better regulated as a result, have autistic children that are better regulated. It's
Go figure.
yeah. I just a little bit about me. I run an organization called Bay Area Autism Collective, and we provide peer support groups facilitated by an autistic facilitator based on identity. So we have just a regular social group. We have one for autistic people who are in addiction recovery, one for autistic people who are parents, one for autistic people who are trans. And it's really important for me in the future to start bringing mindfulness meditation to the autism community through my organization, because I think that it's just an under-recognized, underused tool.
Yeah. Wow. All that's incredible. If I can just add a tail end, like speaking of it being revolutionary, right? For certain folk, I was completely lost before I found DBT. For those at home, dialectical behavioral therapy. It changed my life, and not because I needed therapy, because I mean, borderline personality disorder, there's a lot out there that we can talk about on that. I didn't know I was autistic yet at that point. And yes, I do think autism plus trauma equals BPD sometimes. Like that's how it can, like that brain expresses the trauma and needs help coping out of. But DBT specifically brought mindfulness to me in like an actual pragmatic way that I could latch onto and practice with. And that's what gave me the opportunity to kind of separate from my thoughts as if they're fact, separate from my emotions as if they're fact. Like, yes, my body can feel those things, and that's important to sit and move through. But like, just because I think something's happening, assumptions, right? That doesn't mean that it's actually happening. Like, what in the real world is showing me that? And do I have other supports to tell me that it's not? So I just, Bird, all of that's incredible. I think I'm right with you. Like, I think everybody specifically could use DBT, but that's another story. But like mindfulness specifically is like the thing, I think, out of all of it, that could be really, really beneficial to so many autistic folks specifically.
Yeah, DBT is also what brought me to my mindfulness practice. And I just cannot sing its praises enough. It is such a wonderful set of tools for people who have difficulty regulating emotions. And that's how it was introduced to me. And the residual effect is this amazing mindfulness practice that has really just changed my ability to cope with life and changed my outlook on life in ways that's just profound.
Same. That's so cool.
And I know certainly for myself, mindfulness has made it easier to acknowledge those times when I've got it wrong. You know, it made it easier for me to acknowledge, you know, I have privilege that I benefit from, and because of that privilege, I've done things and said things that I shouldn't have. Because I was able to sit with that discomfort without placing judgment upon myself or other people.
Yes.
Yeah. Yep. That's really important.
But this kind of leads neatly into a question we had put in the comments from Moats Place the Page, saying, and it was an open question, saying, is it our role to help people lower these defenses, which are a barrier, or not?
I would love to weigh in on that. First of all, I think without an invitation, we should tread lightly when it comes to helping people lower the defenses. But I think that helping people lower their defenses can be an act of compassion.
Yeah. Absolutely.
And it's interesting as well.
No,
Sorry,
that's it,
Bird, have you
yep.
finished? Or yeah, it's interesting as well because we keep talking about safe spaces or safer spaces, but obviously that means different things to different people within a room. And because we're autistic and because we're queer, most of us have experienced quite a lot of trauma, not because we are those things, but because of how people treat us because we are those things. And that can be, you know, if you have a fully autistic space or a fully queer space, or maybe one that's both, there's a lot of trauma in that room. So trying to keep everybody safe and growing together is not an easy task. It probably doesn't answer that question at all, but like that's where I would
I
put
know
it.
certainly.
Yeah.
Sorry, Jason, did you want to go? I was going to say my take on that question would be that I know for me as an autistic person who, and I was talking about this with someone not long before coming on this podcast, I have really strong justice sensitivity. Like I really struggle with injustice. And that makes me want to be the knight in shining armor to run in and resolve the issue and educate everyone, and everyone's happy now. But that's not how the world works, because as you said, Bird, you know, if you don't have that invitation, what you're doing is you're stepping on other people's boundaries. They've not invited you to educate them, so they didn't want it, and they're probably not going to be as receptive to it as you think. And the other problem, of course, with the charging in headfirst to fix things is that you are treading all over your own boundaries. You're putting yourself at risk for the sake of something that is probably not going to go your way. So it's not that I don't think it's our role to help people lower their defenses. I think there are situations where you can. But I do think it's one of those invitation-only kind of parties. Jacek, did you have something to say?
Yeah, I do agree with. So consent, first and foremost, is so important. That should be centered in this kind of realm of stuff. Like we don't want to be coaching people or educating people without them asking for it. Because if they're not asking for it, they're not going to really receive it. You know, that's also wasted energy on your part most of the time anyway. But that being said, like if it is asked for, okay, I'm going to rewind a second. I think it's our job to live as authentically and loudly as we can in spaces that we feel safe to do so, and in spaces that we have courage enough to do so in. And it's not a judgment marker on whether or not you feel safe or courageous enough or whatever, but it is like, if you can, let's do it. Because the more that we lead by example, the more people will see that and be like, that's interesting. Maybe they'll ask you questions about how you see things, what your perspective is, what you do, what tools you have at your disposal, that kind of thing. Like I reposted something the other day about, hang on, let me find it because it was worded really well about being queer specifically, where like, you know, in community. Oh yeah, remember what it felt like when you saw a queer person owning it and it gave you permission to be yourself. You're that person to someone. Like I want that in all facets of life and whatever identities we have. Just being you gives other permissions to be them, other people permission to be themselves. And I think there's also responsibility to people who are leaders, educators, facilitators, curator of spaces, to set people up not for safety, because safety is never guaranteed. Even in safer spaces, this is actually part of my like real world job that I do in the dance world, the social dance world. Safety is never a guarantee, even when you do your best. But if you are using access as literally the point of access to safety, it's much more likely that you will do a better job. So focusing instead on access, how are people able to enter this space? How are people prepared or not prepared? Do you have resources? Do you have accommodations? Like, what is it that will make this space the most accessible that it can be? And because of that, how safe can it be? So switching out of safety and more into access is kind of a passion of mine. in this world of stuff. So I do think it is the people who set up those spaces, right? Like that is our job, to help people if they are receptive and seeking it, to help them with their barriers, to give them tools and resources, to be someone they can work with in that capacity.
Yeah, it's like this ever evolving process to try to meet the needs of a group of people, and doing that is partially accomplished, never, but also doing that is partially accomplished by recognizing and respecting people's need for autonomy, especially disabled and queer people's need for autonomy. And I think that exercising like emancipatory models when creating spaces is a helpful perspective, to be inclusive of everyone, but also democratic models where you're getting constant feedback from the people who are there and what they need. And there's always going to be competing needs, but by creating expectations within the group that is a fact, helps people learn how to practice radical acceptance with each other and our differences.
Yes. And how to help. Well, it should also inspire like some form of like self-regulation. How do you take care of you?
Yes.
Amongst the conflicting needs. Not that systems can't support that also, but like, yeah, it sets the expectations. I love how you phrase that. That's
And it's really interesting. So for people who don't know this about me, I do cancer service inequity research or accessibility research. So I've worked with neurodivergent and disabled people, and doing that alongside a trans plus group as well. So for some people, cancer services might might just be I've been asked in for a scan and I haven't gone. Okay, so talk to me about that. Or for some people, I've had, I'm in remission. This is my third time I've had cancer now, and this is my story as a trans person accessing cancer-related healthcare. So we are very specifically creating a space in which, some really hard stuff's going to come up for people. So, it's constantly reevaluating and talking to different people each time as well. So it's not like a group of people that we speak to regularly. So constantly having to check in with ourselves as community researchers who are all trans and have experiences of cancer services in one way or another, and also checking in with the room and with individuals and stuff. It's constant evolving. It's an action, that needs to constantly be happening in every space. It's not just like, oh, we've set up this space for autistic people or queer people. And, even if you've got everyone in the area who might be interested in telling you what might be good and what they prefer and stuff like that, it needs to be a constant thing that we keep checking in with. Is this still appropriate for you? Is this still good? Is it still what you need? Is it still what you want? Like, how is everything going with things? There's no point consulting people at the beginning and then not consulting people throughout the whole of it. It just makes no sense whatsoever.
And Sharon Louise says health services are so heavily gendered, not welcoming at all or safe. I don't know. And I was thinking about this whilst you were talking, actually, Katie. A lot of the really crappy experiences I've had around being queer and neurodivergent have been in healthcare settings. And they are the one setting where you really need people to be affirming, because that's often people at their most vulnerable.
Yep. I have so much anger. I have so much rage about this topic specifically. I don't even know if I should start.
I think we do need to talk about professional settings. So,
oh God, yeah. I mean, I know this ranges, across the world. I am, just to contextualize, I'm also in the United States. I think we're the same, the Bay Area, so we're both on the side of the pond. And it's just absolutely wild, the the range of access we have here, because you can find very gender affirming care depending on where you live and how much money you have. Or if you happen to have a good state that has decent Medicaid that, you know, provides that. And then you have the absolute worst end of the stick on the opposite end. And it's just really curious. Like, I'll speak from my experience. The hoops that I've had to jump through as a privileged white person is just honestly astounding. So I can only imagine how much worse it is for people who are not privileged to be white. In that case, like having to fight with multiple marginalized identities is just absolutely absurd. From having to like wait 2 years to get my hysterectomy and like fight and almost lose it because the office lied and fucked up. And sorry, I don't know if we can swear on this, but like, okay. like that, it was absolutely absurd. The ridiculous journey I had to take just to have my body be my own. And then to literally going to the doctor the other day and be dead named I had 3 appointments and 2 of the 3 dead named me. Where they have it's all in the same system, okay? It's a lack of training and care within the individual groupings of medical professionals where they actually give a shit and know to look at not the birth name, but like the added section. It's not a great process either. The software doesn't allow for like, it's nauseating. It's upsetting. I hate having to be the person every time, be like, listen, you need to do better because I'm okay. But what if another trans person who is not okay comes to your office and has to handle being dead named and misgendered? And, you know, it's gross. It's fucking gross. And that's like the least of it, you know. There's people outright like dying because they're trans, because medical like EMT vehicle comes up and waits. They're like, I don't know if I want to take care of this person. Is this against my religion? Is this against my values? Like, and then they just die. Like, that does happen in this country. It's absolutely horrifying. And I, you know, like, personally, if you're going to have opinions that will directly affect the health of a human being or like the access to services that person needs, maybe don't be in a public service. Hello, welcome back, Bird. But yeah, like maybe don't be in public service occupations. Maybe let people who are ready to serve anybody and everybody do those jobs. It's just, anyway, and then, you know, the preventative like paywall of it all as well. Like, we are neurodivergent and queer people are historically under what's the word I'm looking for? Thank you. Underemployed. Like, abhorrently so. And for us to have to pay so much to get the service we need just to freaking live, just to live. I know we're all fighting under this great monster of capitalism. Like, it's all bad, but like, it's really bad out there for neurodivergent queer people, separately and even more so together. So I just, there's so much that needs to be fixed. I could go on and on. I'll stop there.
You made me think of an experience that I have a lot with doctors. And it's going to sound kind of unrelated, but bear with me, it will come round.
Okay.
It's that same logic though, right? I go to the doctor, for example, I'm in pain with something. Quite a lot of pain. I experience chronic pain. I'm in pain all the time.
Yep.
I am 8 years sober from drug and alcohol addiction. I was addicted to opioid pain medication, amongst many other things. So I just don't touch any of it now. I will go to the doctor, say, this hurts. And they go, oh, we don't know why, but do you want some morphine? Like, have you read my notes? Yeah, but you're sober now. So, yeah, because I don't take it anymore. That's why I'm sober. God. And it just occurs to me, it's like the least queer and neurosafe place ever is this doctor's office, because I'm neurodivergent, which growing research is indicating that substance use is an issue for us, particularly addiction and self-medicating. I'm openly queer, and it's another community that has increased risk for substance use matters. And you're sat there after I have told you I'm 8 years sober, and you can see it on the system, including the flag. I had you right saying, do not prescribe this to this person, because I had to ask for that, apparently.
Oh my God.
And they are still sat there going, yeah, well, you know, you can have these super addictive pain pills if you like. It's been so bad that I've literally been sat in hospital with a broken arm. They've walked up, put painkillers in my hand, and I've gone, what are these? And they go, oh, they're dihydrocodeine. Like, I literally told you 5 minutes ago I'm sober.
Oh my God.
And like, as a person who I'm already managing enough in healthcare settings as an autistic person. I don't want to have to be the person to tell you that you're literally trying to kill me right now.
Oh my God. I'm so sorry, David. That's fucked.
Yeah. And if I can add something to that, again, not related, but kind of related. I am not out as trans, non-binary, wherever it is I'm sitting at the moment, within healthcare. I know that my they, them pronouns aren't going to be listened to, cared about, reacted upon. And I just don't feel like, I very rarely go to the doctors. I have a few chronic things going on, so I should go to the doctors probably more than I do, but I just don't, because it's a pain in the ass to get in there. You've got a phone at a certain time of the day, when the moon's in waning gibbon, in the star of Taurus, you know, whilst the flamingo sings in the nighttime. So it's already really, really difficult for me to know when I'm supposed to be bloody phoning these people. So, and another thing that's massively put me off from that, and they were within a couple of weeks of each other, and it's really, really peculiar. So when I was pregnant with my little boy, my first midwife was speaking about what we were talking about. So one of the questions is like, oh, do you think you'll breastfeed? I said, well, yeah, we'll give it a go and we'll see what's happening, you know. And then she was like, oh, because they want us, oh, you can't be saying that anymore. And if someone was listening to me in here, oh, they'd be talking to me about chest feeding and blah, 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 blah. I went on a bit of a rant about this whilst I'm just sitting there going like, I just need you to measure me for my baby and stuff. At this point, I've not told anyone. I was not out as non-binary at this time. And then I said, well, actually, you know, this is something that they're trialing in Brighton to use both chest feeding and breastfeeding, and then actually go by the patient's needs. So no one's telling you can't do that, and certainly not in this area. So, you know. So anyways, yeah. And then about a week or so later, I had an appointment with my dentist. And then he started going on about, well, you know, I think you're either born a man or you're born a woman. And so it's like, is there something in the water going on here? Like, first of all, why do you have these thoughts anyways? Second of all, you are checking my teeth.
Right.
And then third of all, what is it about me that you think, they'll get it, they'll understand. I want to talk to them about, you know, biological sex. They'll appreciate that. They'll get it. Is there just some kind of weird vibe about me that I'm just like, yeah, I'm really fucked up for those transgenders as well. You know, like,
Amazing. Oh my God.
so I'm just like, yeah, no, I'm never telling any of my medical team any of that.
Bird, do you have anything you want to weigh in on in terms of sort of professional queer and neuro-affirming or not so neuro and queer affirming practice?
You know, I just want to say that I feel so fortunate to live in San Francisco, where this is less of an issue. Like when I take the dog to the vet, I still have to be like, no, I'm not mommy, I'm the parent. Like that's so, just use that word, you know. But most of my medical relationships are with people who are very gender affirming. and I'm a student, and so I'm on state health insurance, and in California, every gender affirming surgery is covered, and it's just a constant part of the narrative. So I feel like here where I live, I have been really validated in my gender, which has been so supportive and I think really necessary for me to be accepting of myself.
Yeah. I'm so happy for you. That's wonderful.
Yeah, that's brilliant. Please, come on.
Real bubble.
I just want to pick up, because we're getting close to the end of our time, but you mentioned, it's validating and helps you accept yourself. We're talking about queer and neuro-affirming spaces. If you want to affirm both, you have to affirm both. Because we as neurodivergent people do not easily accept ourselves. We exist in a world that constantly tells us to be something different. And it doesn't matter what different thing we try out, it's always the wrong thing. It is.
No, it's so true. Sorry.
So, I wondered if we could talk a minute about the fact that, when you affirm someone's queerness as it's okay that you're you, it gives you permission as a neurodivergent person to actually love the whole of yourself rather than just the bits that people want to see.
I just don't see the point in negating someone. Like, what does it do for you to do that? Like, why not just be positive about someone's lived experience? And sure, some people may decide tomorrow that they're not gay or whatever, but just support them with where they're at right now. It's better for everyone's mental health, and it makes you maybe a more positive person just by tailoring your way of thinking around positivity and support. I'm oversimplifying clearly, but it just seems like this could be a more widespread practice just by letting go, letting live, letting be.
Rule number 1, don't be a dick.
Don't be a dick. It's not that hard. It's really not good. Oh God. And I will say, like having, like, it costs nothing to just believe someone. I'll just echo what Bird's saying. Like that costs nothing. In fact, it might even save money. Like, if we're talking from the medical perspective, I think there are studies out there that I've seen. Like it saves money to just believe people and give them the treatment that they say that they need, or like do the research to make sure, like if someone's bringing you a problem. I see also in the comments with Sharon, like weight stigma, the same fucking thing. Like, maybe believe people of any size that if they say they're in pain, it's not because of their size. Like, maybe look deeper. Like, it's not. Anyway, we should not have to, of all places, we should not have to be the ones, especially as neurodivergent people, because it is the hardest fucking thing to be our own advocates in vulnerable spaces like that. I am so tired of having to have, like, it takes so many fucking spoons to go get geared up and like, oh, here we go again. Got to protect my heart. Got to, feel secure and like go be berated with mistreatment just to get my health checked out. And even then, I'm like half the time, like for my ADHD, I'm sorry, I'm going on a tangent. I'll take 2 seconds, but like just to get my ADHD reassessed and be like, hey, my body struggled with these medications. Can we try something else? And my doctor, who didn't work with me in the beginning of my journey, being like, oh, are you sure you did have all these substances? I'm worried about you being on illicit substances, blah, blah, blah. Like, I had to fight him just to advocate for myself to get some kind of attention for ADHD. Like, it shouldn't, y'all, it should not be that hard. It should just be show up, be of service, get to the bottom, like the root of the problem, not even the symptoms, but like get to the root of the problem and work with people. Like, nobody knows us better than we know ourselves. We might not have the expertise, but we have the feelings, we have the experience. Fucking believe it. Okay.
Yeah, we're the experts in our own bodies. That's the thing, and our own lived experience. So, like,
God.
Yeah, it's really frustrating.
And someone in the comments, I've got to pin this because they talk. So it's Mo's placed the page again. Says, although some who are realistic, not queer, do not have live and let live, So the paradox of tolerance is a real thing. I think this is a really good point to hammer home.
Yeah.
If we tolerate intolerant people, society will become less tolerant.
Yep.
That's why I make noise. That's why I do things out loud, because I know not everyone can, and someone somewhere might need me to take up my space so that they can take up theirs more safely.
Yep.
Yeah, I think that's the important thing for people with privilege to do, is to really practice in the way we can, being self-advocates and practicing self-determination, because we can pave the way for people who are more marginalized within our same identity groups.
Yep. 100%.
100%. Yeah, and I would also say, I experienced this a couple of months ago now. So a lot of my other research is based around trans autistic narratives, identities, experiences. And there's an interesting thought around neurogenders and our neurology being a big part of our gender expression, our gender identity, and stuff like that. So some people wholeheartedly believe in that, and some people don't, and that's fine. And just sharing information about that. And a couple of months ago, a family that I used to be relatively close with at work, whose young person is also trans and autistic, was just like, oh, it's nonsense like this that's stopping us from getting, gender affirming care. And I said, no, not really, because I can understand your frustration, and I understand that the wait time for this thing that's not individually my fault. And I think it's sometimes easier for people to pit the people who live at the same intersection against each other. And we see with the CAS report, so there was I don't know if Bird and JSIC will know this, but there was a gender identity healthcare report that came out 2 or 3 weeks ago now, the CAS report, and a lot of that was like, vulnerable autistic people and vulnerable autistic children, and kind of being basically coerced into being trans. So some people are not aware of the fact that I am not your enemy, or people within your group are not within your group. You know what I mean? Within your community are not your enemy, because we're all working towards the same cause. Does that make sense? Like, I don't know if that's actually making any sense what I've just said. So, but I think sometimes even it's not just like autistic people or neurodivergent people against queer people, or queer people who don't have accessible spaces for neurodivergent people, but actually people within the very the small but growing group of queer autistic people are still also, it can be quite rough to one another, I would say.
Okay.
And it's so much internalized transphobia and internalized ableism, and a lot of other things.
And sometimes under the guise of like protecting people, there was like a law. I mean, we have so much anti-trans legislation happening in the States right now, but there was a law that they were trying to pass in Missouri that limited access to trans healthcare to people who were did not have mental illness, of which autism was considered one of those. And so you had to have documented 15 months worth of cure of your mental health illness in order to access gender affirming care, which for autistic people, obviously, there's no cure. And so it just completely restricts us under the guise of protecting us, because we are so vulnerable. And relatedly, tangentially, in my own research in my graduate program, I was never able to get approved for my research by the IRB because they were so paternalistic around autistic people that I could not conduct ethnography interviewing autistic people about their experiences in the workplace because they were so vulnerable. And I just see this as a way to silence marginalized voices, especially if the person doing the research is from within that community.
Right. Oh, 100%.
100%. Mm-hmm. And I had a similar experience. I'm in the south of the UK, but it'll be the same across the UK anyways. Of just like constantly having to go through more hoops or having more questions asked of me than would be if I wasn't autistic and trans. I'm like, but wouldn't my interest be, there's bias there, but there's bias whoever's doing research, right? But wouldn't my want to look after myself and people who I'm sharing community with be better? Not worse. But I don't need you to ask fewer questions of me, just the same amount of questions and the same area of questioning of everybody else. So I don't know, like, oh, and will you be safe? And da-da-da. Well, don't put me onto a master's program if you think that I'm so unwieldy. But if I was doing something, on the history of kayaks or something, everyone would just be like, oh, yeah, go for it. Yeah, do whatever you want. But because I'm autistic, talking to autistic people, it's like, oh, and it's trans.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah, no, yeah, I don't know what to do about that. Panics.
I was just going to add that it's so interesting because there's another person in my program and they actually did a study of a vulnerable population, but it was an oral history videography and there was no issue. Like they didn't even have to go through IRB. So had I done it through an oral history angle with a videography documentary style rather than documented ethnography, it would have not even needed ethics board approval. Isn't that weird?
What?
So you can take videos of
talking
people
about their experiences. Yeah, but doing it as a transcribed ethnography through video interviews was just not okay. It's just bizarre.
Wow. That is bizarre.
Well, I feel like this is a relevant point to end on, especially because this is literally the most viewed live stream I've ever done. You have more in common with queer and neurodivergent people as a not queer, not neurodivergent person. You have more in common with us than you do with the people who tell you we're some kind of risk or, get comfortable with that because we're more like you than you realize. Like, surprise, surprise, we have lives, hope streams. We're not automatons that just act on impulse. Well, okay, I do act on impulse, but that's the ADHD.
Some of us do, but don't paint us all the same brush.
But I have the sense to say it was a really bad idea after I've done it.
Mindfulness.
Yeah. But I wanted to thank everyone who's done this evening because it's been a really, really good conversation. And it's literally right now there are 86 people watching this live, which for a live stream isn't too bad. And by that I mean it's phenomenal because most of my views come afterwards when it's in podcast format. So thank you, J-Sick, Bird, Katie. It's been fantastic, and yeah, we've definitely got to do more of these. It's always good.
I'd love to come back, especially now that I figured out my video. I just feel so much more confident, everyone.
Well, we're definitely going to have you back, Bird, because you've mentioned several things that are like hot topics for me. Like the whole reason I ended up doing this sort of thing is because of my interest in autistic people and substance use. So
yes, let's talk about that.
Yeah, we should definitely need to have a chat because Katie and I might have some research and peer review about autistic and substance use things. So there's definitely some stuff coming up on that front. But as I said earlier, I have an app out at the moment called Neurodiversity 101. There's a QR code in the top left corner. It's appeared really weird and way smaller than I expected because I've never used it before. But you can scan that and apparently it'll take you to the place with the thing.
Wow, that's so technological.
I can do computers.
Technology.
So yeah, go if you're on Android. It is coming to like iPhone and iTablet, whatever they're called. iPad? That's the one. Yeah, I can do computers. So please do go download Neurodiversity 101 if you're on Android. It's on the Google Play Store. At some point, I'll fix it so that it actually does give you push notifications, because I published it and then realized I'd set up the push notifications wrong. And then I realized I don't know how I've done it wrong, so I've had to contact someone else to tell me how I've done it wrong so that I can then go and fix it. But the app works, I promise. And, you know, there's lots of stuff to read on there. So, you know, go read to your heart's content.
And I believe it's free,
it is
David,
free.
isn't it?
It does not charge money. So at least not knowingly. No, it really doesn't charge money. Anyway, thank you everyone for joining us today, and we will catch you all next Monday, which is the 17th, and I think we're talking about bisexual and pansexual stuff. So you'll probably get round 3 of my rant about people telling me I'm attracted to frying pans. So thank you, everyone. As always, people on the stream currently, you can hang around if you've got time and we can chat afterwards. But for all of you who are listening, we're going now. Goodbye.
Thank you. Bye.